conflict, without trust is nothing more than politics, right? So we know that in our Congress and in our government, there's always a lot of conflict, but that's not the right level of conflict. There's no trust there. Nobody's really, has one single objective and one rallying cry. The type of conflict that I'm talking about here and what we're instilling in the group is trust and conflict based on trust. And the idea is that everybody is willing to voice their opinions, call each other out. I mean, to the point that we're even calling each other out and saying, hey, listen, I don't think that is the most important priority that you're working on now is aligned with what it is that we want to do from a rallying cry perspective.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? How much conflict do you have in your organization? Do you work as a leader to avoid conflict? Or have you embraced conflict because you know that it will increase collaboration and trust? Well, what we're talking about here is healthy conflict. If you have the right kind of conflict inside your culture, you can have people that are willing to have a dialogue, share their opinions, make decisions together without you having to look over their shoulders. And sometimes you may have to step in and coach them through the process, but healthy conflict is not a bad thing. And in fact, I think you should embrace it. Today, our guest is Magdiel Rodriguez. He is the co-founder of Alivi. Alivi is one of the fastest growing companies. They're a technology company in the healthcare space. Working with HMOs. He'll tell you a little bit more about that in the interview. But they were number 300 on the Inc. list. They grew at almost 1,500% in 3 years. And really an amazing company. And one of the core features behind that is a culture where people have healthy conflict. Today is the episode where we talk about just that topic. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to remind you that you can actually get a tool that I've been working with clients with for the last couple of years. I've refined this tool that's gone through several iterations. Now we have it completely automated. You can actually go online and fill out the leadership quiz. To get the leadership quiz, just go to theleadershipquiz.com. That's pretty easy, right? Theleadershipquiz.com. What you will get when you do that is you will answer a few questions. You will see where you rate based on the core principles of fast growth companies. If you're ready to grow your company or you want to see where you are, then make sure you go to theleadershipquiz.com. Inside it, you will get insight to where you are, understand where you want to improve, and you will get them mapped into the 10 areas that are most specific to fast growth companies. Again, go to theleadershipquiz.com and you can get that right now. Now, here's the interview with Magdiel Rodriguez. How you doing, Magdiel?
Doing great, Gene. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am excited to have you on the Growth Think Tank and talk about, some culture and leadership that's driving this. You have worked with and been the co-founder of Alivi, one of the fastest growing companies on the Inc. list, number 300. Tell us a little bit about what Alivi does.
Gene, thank you for having me on the show, and really appreciate the opportunity to engage in some really good dialogue with you. So Alivi is basically a benefit plan management company for healthcare companies. We really focus in the managed care space, Medicare managed care space. And what we do is we help insurance companies, HMOs, define and design their ancillary benefits for their beneficiaries or the members that they represent. One of the things that we do is we manage anything that has to do with ancillary networks, anything that has to do with claims processing, anything that has to do with utilization management on behalf of the HMO. So we help the HMO provide the best possible quality of care to their members. We develop not only technologies around that, we are a tech-centric, tech-enabled company. And what that allows us to do is not only utilize technology to make things more effective, more efficient, run things in a much better, faster, and quicker way. And the end result of that is really just to provide the best possible quality care for the beneficiaries or the members.
Well, I know all of our leaders listening in here probably understand the whole complexity of healthcare these days, and the costs are rising. I appreciate what you're doing, and sharing some of the insights behind building a company that's grown so fast. You know, almost 1,500% in 3 years. How many employees do you have?
Right now, we have 146.
And culture is important to you. Let me just ask you, why is culture so important to a fast growth organization?
Culture is really the one of the cornerstones of really any growing organization. I think without the right culture in place, it would be very difficult to grow as fast as we have without the right focus and the right people in place. One of the things that we've really tried to do early on, it was a family centric organization where we were six of us basically, and four of us were related. So really the company, from a grassroots perspective, was really focused around a family type culture. However, as you start growing, you need to start behaving more as a company. There's certain decisions that you have to make that are more focused around running a business. And in our case, it's a for-profit business. So as much as we'd like to make decisions and without really looking at the cost implications and bottom lines, there's always a component of understanding why are we making certain decisions and why are we taking on certain risks, which is why early on we decided that in order for us to really ensure that we were doing the right things for the company, we had to bring in the right culture. We had to bring in the right people. And and for us, that didn't necessarily mean everybody looked like us, everybody had to be like us, everybody had to think like us, everybody had to dress like us. That's not what culture is about, right? I mean, and I think one of the beauties of having a healthy organization is around not only a diverse type of workforce, but more importantly, from a culture perspective, is really everyone aligned. Is everyone pulling in the same direction? And I think that is part and center what I believe a strong culture centric organization is all about.
Let's talk about alignment for a second. We all know what that means in leading our organizations, but what are you doing to ensure that you have alignment across the top tier of the company and throughout the company?
So alignment, for us, means basically what one simple concept is. We have what we kind of are taking on as a playbook, and this playbook has really a thematic goal, and that thematic goal is what is the most important thing for us right now, right? And we use that kind of as a rallying cry. So from an alignment perspective, it really stems from the leadership team, and it permeates and it trickles down to everyone in the organization. Everyone really understands what is the rallying cry, what is the most important thing right now that we're all focusing on, and what are the expected results for that rallying cry. That's what we call alignment within the organization, and that alignment, um, usually is not a 3-year alignment. It's not 5-year strategy. It has nothing to do with strategy. Has nothing to do with a 3 or 5 year strategy. It's really what is the most important thing now. What is something that we can all do right now to ensure that we're able to execute on whatever that rallying cry is. And that could be anything from onboarding a new customer to to implementing a new system, to developing new controls or new systems in place. So a rallying cry could really be anything that is important enough for the organization to get behind and to be aligned.
Hold on for a second. This rally cry thing is not a new concept. It's actually been written about in books before. And I did an interview with the CEO and founder of Game Time. And we talked about the way they use this rally cry across the team to create ownership inside the team toward one goal over a 6-month period. Now, everyone can have a different interpretation of this, but if you want to go deeper into that concept of the rally cry, go find the interview I had with Brad at Game Time. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me, Gene at Gene Hammett. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. Now back to the interview. I love that because, a lot of times there's too many goals for organizations, but you guys you can change it over time, is what I'm understanding. But you ensuring that everyone in the organization, 146 people, to know what it is. What has that done for your ability to work together?
It's actually it's been great, and one of the exercises that I was going through when we were developing kind of this work culture and work environment is what would happen to my team and the organization if tomorrow I would just simply have to go away for for 3 weeks. Would everyone still know what the rallying cry is? Would everyone still know what decisions had to be made without someone in there to be able to tell people what to do? And I think that's really what to me was the fascinating point about this, is that playbook actually does exactly that. We can remove myself from the equation, yet no one's going to skip a beat. Everybody knows exactly what the objective is, what decisions need to be done, and I think we have enough trust within the leadership team and within the entire organization that we know that people are going to end up reaching the same decisions and the same conclusions, just simply because we're all working from that same playbook. That same alignment across the board. So I think, to me, that's actually a pretty cool thing.
I think that's what a lot of people are working toward as leaders. They want to make sure their team is empowered to go beyond where they are today, even if you weren't showing up to the meetings and casting vision and doing all the things that you're doing. But while you're there, you're just supporting every little step of that, every individual person, and you're coaching them. When you're working individually with someone, how are you ensuring that they're staying aligned with this rally cry?
So individually, at the individual level, one of the key things that I try to do is just ask them, are you happy? um, Based on what decisions that you're making, are you comfortable with them? Are you happy? Do you think that what they're doing is actually aligned with the playbook and with the rallying cry? um, and you'd be surprised, more often than not. um, I get a lot of responses. Well, I'm happy, but, right, and there's always a but. I'm happy, but I wish we could do this, or I wish we could do something different. And that, to me, is great, because it generates a certain level of dialogue, and then that dialogue turns into some really good conversations, and some of those conversations end up turning into very healthy conflict. And I know that's one of the themes that we wanted to eventually get to, but I think leading up to that conflict is having that trust to have that type of conversation. um, and that's really one of the things that I like to do. I'm almost an instigator, right? I'm going around trying to poke some of these guys and say, hey, what's going on? What can we do different? And again, it boils down to how happy are they in the roles that they are, in making the right decisions, and we have to have enough trust in them that they know what is the level of risk that each one of us can take, without any type of negative backlash associated with that.
Well, let's dive into this healthy conflict. In your world, what is that? What's that definition?
It's actually pretty simple, Gene. I mean, in my world, I mean, our definition is a willingness to disagree, have a voice, have an opinion, provide feedback, without the fear of destructive fighting and interpersonal attacks or unproductive discord. Um, it's pretty simple as that, right? So, one of the things I was reading a book about the around this, and one of the key things around the book is, you know, um, conflict, without trust is nothing more than politics, right? So we know that in our Congress and in our government, there's always a lot of conflict, but that's not the right level of conflict. There's no trust there. Nobody's really, has one single objective and one rallying cry. The type of conflict that I'm talking about here, and what we're instilling in the group is trust and conflict based on trust. And the idea is that everybody's is willing to voice their opinions, call each other out. I mean, to the point that we're even calling each other out and saying, "Hey, listen, I don't think that that is the most important priority that you're working on now is aligned with what it is that we want to do from a rallying cry perspective. So, so I find myself actually interesting that we were talking about this because this just happened to me earlier this week. I was walking by and there was two managers kind of having a pretty a good conflict and good conversation, and I had to stop them right in the middle of their conversation and ask them, hey, listen, um, I want to just acknowledge that you guys are having this level of conflict. And I think this is absolutely the right level of conflict that we want to have. So I was actually encouraging them to continue that level of conflict right in the middle of their conversation. And they both looked at me and just started with their little smirk, started laughing, and then went back at it. But I think that's the level of trust that I really want the entire organization to feel comfortable with, that we can call each other out on certain issues. But at the end of the day, it's all based on trust. And the reality is, if we're all trying to pull in the same direction, I think a little bit of conflict is very healthy.
One moment. Magdiel just talked about conflict. Conflict is really important, but you have to have courage as a leader to allow people to have that kind of conflict. You have to be able to hold space for those moments. You have to encourage them in a special way, and you have to have the confidence to do that. I'm being specific about this because I really want you to think about your level of courage and confidence when it comes to disagreement. Are you avoiding confrontation? Are you avoiding these things? I run into a lot of leaders, even the fast growth companies, that don't have the courage showing up in those moments when they really need it. I say this specifically to you. If you want to continue to evolve as a leader, you have to check in with yourself. You have to know where you're holding yourself back. And this might be one area that you could look at and examine for yourself. And back to the interview. I know that it can go too far, and we can have things that are negative to the culture and leadership. Do you ever have to step in these times when you feel like it's gone on too long and we just need to make a decision?
Yeah, there's always some of that. I think at some point it all depends on our personality profiles, right? So that's another thing that we did within the organization. We all went back and did the whole personality profile for each one of the leadership team, and we began to realize, oh, wait a second, now I know why you question everything, because this is your A-type personality. And I know why you're doing some of these things. So that exercise was actually very, very cool, because you begin to understand why certain people do certain things. And that's happened in a couple of occasions where you have two conflicting personality types where they're actually going at it, and where I have to step in and say, okay, guys, the reality is we can argue and have this conflict for the next 3 hours, and at the end of the day we're not going to accomplish what we want. So let's go back and look at what the problem statement is, right? So really, I try to ground everybody back to exactly what is the problem statement and what's the solution that we can control. Instead of in certain occasions we're trying to look for a problem. We have a solution and we're just trying to find a problem somewhere, and we're trying to do the opposite. Is now let's just identify what the problem statement is, and let's just come up with a solution, whether it's a process, a people process, or a tool solution. If we can control it, let's look at it in that context.
So when you describe it that way, Magdiel, I really feel like you have a coaching kind of style to you. Is that natural to you, or is it something that you've had to develop as a leader?
No, I've actually had to develop that. I've made a conscious effort over the past really 3 years or so, 3-4 years, to really start looking at the different leadership styles, right? What's out there, and there's so many different books and so many different experts out there. And in the one that I found that fits my personality is exactly what you said, is more of a coaching style versus hey, kind of, this is the way we're going to do it, and I think it's the best way to do it, and let's just do it this way. I'm very as a matter of fact, one of the areas I needed to work on, believe it or not, was actually conflict. I did one of these conflict analysis exercises, and I was completely on the opposite side of the conflict spectrum. I wanted to avoid every possible conflict. so I'm actually like the poster child for conflict, because throughout my entire career, the last thing I wanted to do was confrontation or conflict. I was there to fix a problem, leave me to it, I'll take care of it, don't talk to me anymore, I don't even want to argue about it, let's just get it done. So when I started looking at healthy organizations and what do they have in common, what's the leadership style at those healthy organizations, they all shared a passionate approach for healthy conflict and dialogue, and a certain level of collaboration. And I actually had to work on that, right? To the point where I was almost forcing myself to engage in certain level of conflict without just being very dismissive, because nobody wants to sit around in a room, people kind of, I wouldn't say yelling and screaming at each other, but tempers do flare up a little bit, and people are passionate, especially when you know what you're doing and you're passionate about your work. That sometimes the blood pressure kind of raises a little bit, especially if you're Latin. And most of my entire leadership team is Latin, so you can just imagine how some of our staff meeting goes. But we've had to actually make an effort to have the healthy conflict, because it doesn't come natural. Nobody wants to get into an argument, over how to implement certain solutions. But we actually had to work on it, and I was the first one that just, man, it was tough at first.
You're not alone. I talk to a lot of leaders just like you, and they would rather avoid conflict.
Oh boy, yeah.
And if you're listening in here, leaning into that, and really understanding where it comes from, and really kind of getting beyond it is what it takes to evolve as a leader. I want to give you one last question as we wrap this up. When you think about, the next level of growth for your company, what is it one thing you're working on as a leader to take the company into that next era?
So from a culture perspective, one of the things that we're looking at is identifying the right people, to, as the book says, who are you going to let on the bus, right? One of the biggest challenges that I think we are facing as a growing company is the rapid onboarding of new talent and new staff. We've had situations in where um, we know if someone's not going to work out within the first couple of weeks. And one of the challenges I had with our team here is, man, how can we take a great individual that we know it's the right culture, is the right fit, and clone this person, right? How can we clone this person? How can we get 20 more genes to work for us? And that's a challenge, right? That's a challenge, because um, you really don't know until they're in the door. So what we're trying to do is use some tools, use some analytics, use certain tools that are out there available in the industry to help us identify who the right individual is, what the right fit is for our organization, number one, and number two, for that position. Because just because you're a great individual and you fit the culture, well, maybe we shouldn't be putting you in a product development function. Maybe you're a good customer service rep, or you may be a good account management, but you're not a good sales on the sales side. So one of the things that we are really struggling with, and this is part of what we want to do over the next year or two, and it's one of our priorities, is how do we take the right approach from an onboarding process, from a hiring process? How do we bring in the right people for the right positions? And and um, and I think that's one of the areas, to be honest with you, that's really we're struggling with.
Well, I again, you're not alone. A lot of people are trying to hire people. The market drives or opportunities are tight, and
Hmm.
talent is scarce.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I appreciate you sharing with us what you have done and focused on as a leader to grow the company. Alivi is doing good stuff in the world, and I really appreciate you being here at Grow Think Tank. Wow, what a fantastic interview! I really love his intention for leading his company and creating the space for people to figure out the problems themselves, to collaborate, to trust each other. And that is really a sign of a fast growth company, because I talk to a lot of companies, and leadership that encourages people to collaborate with healthy conflict really does have an advantage over those that avoid it. If you have any questions about your leadership and how your culture is going to fit in the next era of your company, make sure you reach out to Gene at genehammett.com. If you have anyone interested in this podcast topic, make sure you tell them about Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.